It's an honor to be with all of you, and my goal is to celebrate Women's History Month with some fireworks today as we're ending March. I want to thank our sponsors, of course, Blue Cross Blue Shield and Eastern Bank, and welcome everybody. This is our first official Lunch and Learn, and it's truly an honor to get to spend time with the women who are leading the Commonwealth during these unprecedented times. We're all looking forward to hearing how they are writing the next chapter of our state's history. And we hope you're looking forward as much as we are to learning more about their legislative agenda and the goals they want to achieve for the women of Massachusetts. So let me first introduce all of our panelists. Senate President Karen Spilka. In 2018, her colleagues elected her president of the chamber, making her the third woman ever to hold the position in our state's history. Senator Joan Lovely represents the 2nd Essex. She is Assistant Majority Leader, Chair of the Senate Committee on Rules, and Senate Co-Chair of the Caucus of Women Legislators. Representative Chynah Tyler, in 2016, at the age of 26, won the Suffolk district seat, the 7th Suffolk, and in her second term, she is already serving as the Chair of the Massachusetts Black and Latino Legislative Caucus and the Chair of the Boston delegation. Thank you so much for joining us today. So we want to start with Senator Spilka and her Women's Her Story project. Senator, the first time I ever went to the State House, it was to visit your office for Women's History Month. And I walked into your formal chambers and they were transformed. So I'm wondering if you would tell everybody what you did to your chambers and why.
Okay, thank you. And first of all, thank you, Mass Women's Political Caucus, for having us all gather here today, the last day of Women's History Month in 2021, in a very strange past year, but we are coming through it. But thank you for highlighting not only her story, but all of women in the Commonwealth. Thank you. And it's great to be here with my friends and partners, Senator Lovely and Representative Tyler. When I became Senate President, on the wall of the Senate President's big office, the suite, are pictures, black and white pictures of all of the prior Senate presidents. I'm the 95th Senate President of Massachusetts. So within the major office, there were about...
Senator, I'm afraid someone has muted you. Okay.
It extended into the hallway, the entrance foyer, so to speak, where there were maybe another 10 women, or 10 pictures. And over the course of the first few months of being Senate President, I realized I felt uncomfortable looking at all of their faces. They were in the Senate President suite itself, were all older white men. And it really struck me that not only in the Senate President's suite and office, but anywhere you go in the State House, women have been left out of the history, the physical history, the depictions, the posters, the paintings, the murals, the busts. Women are nowhere to be found in the State House, whether it be by accident or design, because men design the State House pretty much. We were left out totally, as if we had no role in the history of Massachusetts, which is pretty outrageous when you think about that. So what I decided to do was, and you know, my team, we all worked, and particularly Carlene Amond of my office and Sumia Edelhaj of my office, and now Jim Zambrano and others worked very hard. We went through the history of Massachusetts, sort of finding women who have had a positive impact on the history of Massachusetts, some way or another, some born and brought up, some came for a short period of time. The first year, we replaced them with all different women of all different backgrounds, ethnicities, races, any geographic diversity, background diversity, what their sector was in. We had Weedamoo from the Native American from 1600s. And it went all the way until the current time period, trying to stay in line with whoever was the Senate president at the time, the same chronological sequence of the time period. And that's when the State House was open, and I think you saw that one. And it was, I felt so much more comfortable, I have to say, looking up and seeing their faces than the prior ones that I had covered over. It just was a much more comfortable feeling. So I put it up originally for Women's History Month, and I kept it for the entire year. I did not take it down until now. We have replaced those pictures with a new grouping of women, all women of color, who have had a positive impact on Massachusetts, with the recognition that, you know, there were so many to choose from. So we have a new group, and again, you know, Carlene Almond in my office, Sumia Edelhaj, Jim Zambrano, and others, Antonio Caban, and we are it's just wonderful. I mean, I wish it could be open to the public, because it is a terrific grouping of 95 women, approximately 95 women, who have done some wonderful things for Massachusetts. And that is consistent with my hope to bring women to the chamber. We will be getting a bust. We left, when we renovated the chamber, Senate chamber, I left a space open, not replacing all the older male busts, leaving a space, one for Frederick Douglass and one for a woman as well, to bring women into the State House. We are there. They can't ignore us. And we have greatly contributed to the Commonwealth. I would suggest at least equally to what all the men have contributed, possibly more, but I would say at least equally. So it would be great to start bringing that throughout the halls of the State House.
So this year, you mentioned that you made transformed the chamber for women of color who had led the Commonwealth. You've also put together a video. Can we show it?
Sure.
Yeah. So Einar, would you show us it's just 2 minutes, but it's very moving. As they bring it up, Senator, I just wanted to tell you, when I went for the first time to see it, I had felt like incredibly lonely in organizing and asking women to run for office, particularly in municipal settings. And I went to your office and I didn't feel lonely anymore.
Oh, so, good. You know, and one of the wonderful comments that we got with when we had a group of young adults of color, to hear a young adult woman say to me, "Wow, for the first time, I see myself here." That was just such a great thing to hear, because we all should be role models for our children and young adults, and they need to know that they can accomplish anything if they set their heart on it. So it was great. So I'll let you show this video. Thank you. There is a lot of history on these walls. Senate presidents dating back to the 1700s. See a pattern? We've heard their stories, we've seen their faces, but they are not the whole picture. There is so much more to our history So many other voices transformed our great Commonwealth. And thanks to the vision of my colleague, Carleen Almond,
together, we can finally share her story. 91 frames, 91 women of color. They are the best in their field. They are pioneers and strong, independent spirits who left their mark on Massachusetts.
Like Elizabeth Mumbet Friedman, the first enslaved woman to use the court system to win her freedom in Massachusetts.
Community leader and Black activist Melnia Cass, who helped women register to vote and desegregate schools.
Dr. Mary Crutchfield Thompson, one of the first Black women dentists in Boston and an outspoken voice against redlining. Our collective story as a Commonwealth is incomplete without women of color who either by accident or design have been left out of our stories for far too long.
They are our example. They are our teachers. They are our past. They are our present. And what they represent can be our future.
Let's be intentional about who we lift up. It's their turn to speak. So, join the Massachusetts Senate this Black History and Women's History Month in celebrating and honoring our sheroes.
Because Massachusetts history is her story too.
Thank you so much, Senator. I just love that video. Do you want to say anything else about your project?
I think that says it all. It just warms my heart every time I see it.
Thank you so much. I'm glad we were able to share it with everyone today. This does bring us to the present day. You know, we've never needed women's voices at the table more urgently. And I wanted to talk with all three of you about the pandemic and how it has disproportionately affected women, particularly in the workforce. I saw a stunning statistic that said 100% of the women unemployed in December were women. So I wanted to start by asking, how did the pandemic reshape your thinking about the disparities women are facing right now?
I could start on that one. Certainly, I've had the opportunity to be, first of all, thank you to the Mass Women's Political Caucus for having me and all my esteemed panelists. Very, very grateful to be here. Very, very grateful for the work that you continue to do to be able to, you know, uplift the legacy of so many great women here in the Commonwealth, Massachusetts and beyond. And I'm honored to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with you to execute that mission. And when it comes to, you know, disparities women face during the pandemic, obviously a lot of those disparities were exacerbated, obviously, during the pandemic. And I would say one that was concerning to me was of the workforce. I had the opportunity last year to serve on the Pay Equity Commission, kind of looking at numbers and where women fall, in particular women of color fall on the scale of being paid. And what I learned was that there was almost a $35,000 wage gap between $1 for white men and any given women, particularly Black women. And those issues are concerning to me because what it indicates is that women are having issues with having access to opportunity. And so the future in recovering from this pandemic and more so providing more access to opportunity looks like us doing the work that we do every day in identifying what workforces are having those same statistics. And then also too, what workforces can we adjust that in? And so just recently, as folks may know, in 2017, we've had the honor collectively to bring forth a new industry, which is the first time that we have done so since prohibition through the marijuana industry. And for example, the workforce numbers kind of look very similar to, you know, being mostly white male dominated, and that is unacceptable. And so we've done so many so much work in bringing forth access to opportunity and developing workforce and development programs so that women can do away with that number and can participate in the new industries that we're creating. Our whole goal is to be able to make sure that we're providing access to opportunity and equitable access to opportunity, and we're all about it, and we're making sure that we do not miss a beat. I also wanted to talk about specifically the city of Boston and some things that we've been able to do here in Boston. One of the industries that we've recognized that is very concerning as far as the lack of women being present is the firefighter force, where it is upwards to 90% male and 73% white, and that is concerning. And we've done something about it. We actually authorized recently last year the first ever fire cadet program so that more women and people of color in general can join into this workforce. And so we're hitting the pavement and we're making sure that we're creating those access to opportunities, because again, if you don't know about it, like Senator President noted, if I'm not aware of the places that I can reach, if I didn't know that a woman could be a Senate president, I cannot see myself there. And so I also wanted to thank her. I had the opportunity to visit her office last year and see her project. And it was really, really mind blowing. So I want to thank her for the work that she's doing. And, to have a dynamic women in the House of Representatives, one of my good friend, Claire Cronin, to be the majority leader. It's amazing to see because I haven't seen that before as a woman in politics. And so I just wanted to say those are some of the things that we're looking forward to uplifting, and we will continue to hit the ground running and making sure that we're making a positive impact and being intentional as to how we're using our platforms to be able to do so.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you mentioned firefighters. Senator Lovely, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you. And thank you to MWPC for putting on this event today, and to my fellow panelists. I'm honored to serve with them. So we've always known that there's been structural inequities impacting women. Pay equity was mentioned by Representative Tyler. We've addressed that. Pregnant Worker Fairness Act was a legislation that we passed to address, again, pregnant women in the workforce. But the pandemic has thrown all this into a very harsh light. Women, we multitask, primary caregivers, homemakers, while also working full time to support families. Now we transition to school teachers, full-time employees at home, cooking, cleaning, etc. And now we're struggling to find a lot of women, a lot of families to find childcare to be able to assist. That's really out of reach for many families. And we have seen during the pandemic a disproportionate number of women who have left or are leaving the workforce to care for families. Some of the calls that we are receiving in our office about unemployment, for example, we've got 3 calls. One was a family who, actually it was a husband who left his job to care for children, applied for unemployment, and he was denied. We received 2 calls from 2 women who were denied benefits only on the basis that they left their jobs to care for their children at home. We were able to connect them back into the system and be able to get those denials reversed. No one should have to, because they have to leave the workforce to care for small children at home, that they are denied benefits. So these are some of the glaring inequities that we have seen within our own system that we need to really take a look at as we move forward. And I'm so proud to be named to Reshaping Massachusetts. It's a new Senate committee. Thank you, Madam President, for appointing me, and led by Senator Hines. And we're going to be starting a number of hearings starting next week to listen to people all across the Commonwealth. And in particular, I will be interested in listening to women and how the pandemic has really affected, we have 80% of those who have left the workforce due to COVID were women. 80%, you said 100% last December. So we need to reverse these numbers and as we move forward and really assist women and families going forward. So thank you.
Senator Lovely, how can we participate in those resilience?
In the hearings? Yes, so we will make sure that those are, I will talk to the chair to make sure that those are being made public. Those are very public, obviously. We want people to weigh in on their thoughts and ideas and how things are impacting them. I will share that over to the caucus so that you can get that out there as well. so that we really will hear. And these hearings will go on for weeks. We're actually going into each each segment of the Commonwealth. So we're not just hearing from Boston or the Northeast. We're going to hear from Western Massachusetts and the Cape, et cetera. We really need to hear from everybody. So thank you.
Mhm. Senator Lovely, actually, can I ask one more question? I'm curious, what's worrying you the most based upon what you're hearing from your constituents?
I will tell you that we really need people to be able to rebound. I was on a panel earlier this week listening to the business community about people who are, for example, a particular restaurant in Salem. I actually happened to speak to that restaurant owner, not able to get people to come back to work in the kitchen because of the generous unemployment benefits that we have given to individuals and to families. So we need to balance that. We need to encourage people to go back to work when it is safe to do so. I will tell you that many people are still very afraid to go back to work, but we're underway with vaccinations. I've had my first. I look forward to my second so that I can protect myself and others as we navigate our way out of this. So, worried about a lot of things, but I think that, thankfully the federal government under the new administration has stepped up and is sending significant relief funds to the states. As we know, states cannot deficit spend, only the federal government can. So we needed to rely on that, and we'll continue to rely on that as we navigate our way out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Spilka, do you want to talk about how the pandemic has reshaped your thinking?
Thank you. Some of it overlaps with what the representative and senator previously said, but I was really struck by a recent op-ed in the Globe that shared the following statistics. Before the pandemic, women in Massachusetts were participating in the workforce at increasing rates, surpassing the national rate by the time 2019 hit. And then COVID-19 brought them back to where they were at the end of the Great Recession in 2009. It literally took my breath away. 1 year of COVID-19 wiped out a decade of women's progress in the workforce, wiped it out, and built on what has been for many a lifetime of progress. It's gone in the space of 1 year. The pandemic, as we've stated, has thrown a lot of inequities into sharp relief, for particularly as women and women of color were harder hit. So I immediately started advocating for more attention to be paid to childcare. As Senator Lovely has noted, it's, I believe, an essential part of our infrastructure just as much as transportation, and people need childcare in order to go back to work or to work, even if it's in their home. But I do believe we need to rethink childcare. We need to have major reform for childcare, how we pay for it, the funding model. Currently, we pay per child, sort of per head of in each classroom. That doesn't work if you need to ensure the child care center continues to thrive. It may not be that per head makes it sufficiently viable for the center. We need to look at overall costs and pay for it in a different way. We need to ensure that families have access to affordable, flexible, high quality childcare, and put sort of a cap on it for cost for families, and look at, if families aren't taking their children near their work, if they're not commuting into any downtown area, do we need to have more childcare centers in different locations? Do we need the hours to be different? If people are working from home instead of from 9 to 5, maybe I'll work from 12 noon to 9. And I need childcare during some of that time. So I do believe that the pandemic has brought to light, even more so than before, the burdens that women face as caretakers. Not only are they key to our economy, but they also care for our children, our family members, our elders, and we need to really look at that. And that's why recently I worked really hard and pushed and fought for emergency paid leave, particularly for our essential workers, that we recently passed in the Senate and the House. And while I'll continue to focus on women's physical and mental health also for everybody, but particularly for women, and the health disparities that women and women of color are still confronting.
What has you most worried this year?
Generally, mental health. It has me most worried very often, even previously. We all knew that our mental health care system was lacking and not reaching so many people that needed attention, whether it be because parity did not exist, the stigma, and that's what one of my top priorities has always been getting parity for physical and mental health, but also reducing the stigma. It is even worse with the pandemic, as our kids are home, there's stress on their parents or guardians. As kids are home, they're feeling stressed, haven't been in school, they haven't had as much contact with their peers and friends, and they're feeling isolated. The stress that women are feeling, it's been compounded if they need to help their children with school, take care of their elderly parents. There's just so many factors, and a year of being more socially distanced and isolated takes its toll on everybody. And I hear from so many people, in some ways they're looking forward to the time when we get back to a better situation. I will never say back to normal, because we're not going back to the old normal. But a lot of people are also anxious over that. They're so used to being at home or isolated, and then suddenly the thought of being thrust out also creates anxiety. That's why telemedicine, telehealth was so important, and enabling people to be able to keep a lot of their mental health, their behavioral health appointments now through telehealth has actually decreased the number of appointments that have been canceled, because it is a lot easier. More and more people are using telehealth, finding it easier to have their sessions with their therapists, their doctors, their providers. And I think that is a fabulous thing.
I'm glad you mentioned telehealth, because it makes me think that there are certain silver linings to the past year. Tell me what you're most optimistic about.
I am very hopeful and optimistic that when we come out of this, we will be what I call back to better. There are always silver linings in any situation, and telehealth is one of them. The act of kindness is so many people. There's been a lot of unkind actions that get highlighted recently. But there's also been a lot of kindness, people volunteering to help others make appointments when the website was so messed up. And just, there's been so much, and this is why I did start in the Senate a new committee on reimagining Massachusetts. And I wanted a hopeful name for it. How do people reimagine Massachusetts? This is an opportunity for us to plan, what do we want to come back to? What do we want our future? Government generally does not plan long-term. They plan a year or two maybe, but not long-term. This is an opportunity for us to really look at our systems, whether it be our health systems, our work, our transportation, or anything. What do we want to plan to come back to? So I am very hopeful about that and optimistic.
Oh, thank you. Representative Tyler, I'd like to ask you those two questions too. Like, what What are you most worried about right now, and what are you most optimistic about?
Thank you for asking. I am most worried about, access to opportunity. But we have some systems in play to be able to continue to open the doors for more opportunity for women to be able to excel and reach their fullest trajectory. So I'm very, very confident about that. We have the budget cycle coming up, and there will be a lot of positive things that we will um, put on the output and pass throughout this budget session. And so I'm excited about that. So please look out for the things that we will put out for the budget. Something that I'm optimistic about is to be able to ensure that women who happen to be incarcerated have equitable access to that same opportunity. This pandemic has exacerbated issues around women who happen to have CORIs. So imagine where they stand today with all the ills and the disparities that we have learned of and have faced over the last year. And so one of the things that I'm most optimistic about is being able to actually implement the primary caretakers bill, which is something that we all worked on collectively last year. And the primary caretakers bill is an opportunity for parents to be diverged from actually being incarcerated in efforts to be able to keep families together. We know that our Department of Correction system in general is not a place of rehabilitation, particularly for young women who get further traumatized when it comes to being incarcerated. And we're trying to do our best to be able to reduce the harm that women face upon becoming incarcerated. And so implementing the primary caretakers bill and ensuring that we create methods of diversion for women who happen to experience the justice system is something that I'm very optimistic about this year.
Great. Actually, so, we're calling this a lunch and learn, and I'm looking, we have 96 participants, and I wonder if you would just briefly tell people what it means to have a new budget cycle.
Sorry, can you ask that again? I missed you.
Oh, what does it mean to have this new session? Not everybody follows the ins and outs of the State House so carefully.
Yes, so every 2 years we embark on a new cycle, a legislative cycle. So this cycle or this session is the 192nd legislative session where we file all new bills and we have an opportunity to do a clean new budget. And so I'm very grateful for that because we learned so much over the pandemic as far as data and disparities that women face, in particular women of color as well. And so we have a new opportunity to be able to address some of those ills and some of those concerns. And so this session, I'm looking forward to being able to, address some of those issue topics.
That's great. Thank you so much. We've talked about this session and we've talked a little bit about long-term goals. Representative Tyler, do you want to say anything more about the long-term goals that you hope for your community?
So I have a ton of them. I guess I'll focus on education then. And making sure that we reduce harm when it comes to women who happen to be incarcerated is definitely at the top of my list, but in no particular order. Also, to making sure that we offer great academic experiences for our students, in particular for our young women students and just for our students in general. Right now, last year we passed the first education reform bill since 1993, the Student Opportunity Act, which is something that we're very all proud about. However, we're still having concerns as far as how our students are doing academically. And right now, they just aren't ready to compete upon graduation of the 12th grade. And so we're doing what we can to make sure that our students, one, not only have great academic experiences, but that also, two, we're making sure that they are set up to compete in the world upon graduation. We have some of the greatest institutions and colleges in our backyard. We have Harvard, we have MIT, we have Northeastern, which I'm a proud alum of, and not very many women. A lot of people that I know are first generation never had an opportunity to see their family members go to a four-year institution. And we really want to see our young women and our young people in particular to see themselves on these campuses because they can compete and they can do well. We just haven't had the opportunity to be able to provide them the access, but hopefully with some of the resources that the Student Opportunity Act has put out, we will begin to see some changes within our local school systems.
Thank you so much. So I want to move to the third part of our conversation. We've talked about the women's history. We're talking about the present. I want to talk about the future. I think we all agree that we want to see more women in office. I know that's the mission of MWPC. And right now we're stuck at like 31% in the Senate, 30 in the House. According to Dr. Krista Kelleher at the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy, About a quarter of women are mayors in Massachusetts. A quarter serve in either a select board, a city council, or a town council. So the numbers are low. And I think what's always struck me is that the numbers haven't budged in roughly 2 decades. You know, when I first started talking about getting women to run for office in my little town, what I didn't know was that the town had never elected women. You know, that like in 375 years, we had only elected maybe, 12 women, and that was a really high number for this region. So I want to talk about, actually, I'm looking for advice. What's your pitch? What do you say to women in order to get them to run for office? I think Representative Tyler wants to go first.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions. I think that one of the things that I always tell young women in general is that, hey, you don't need permission to make an impact on your community. If you feel like you have something great to offer, please go out and do so. Now, that's not a call for folks to run, against incumbents, because there are a lot of my incumbent friends who are doing some amazing things. But there is definitely, if you feel like you have a representative and or a senator that is doing amazing things, please get out there and figure out how you can collaborate. We definitely have an open door policy. We are public officials for a reason. The first part, public, is most important. And we want to make sure that we're doing our best to be able to serve our districts as best as we possibly can. So please reach out to us and let us know how we can continue to collaborate to serve our districts equitably.
Thank you. Senator Lovely, I know we've had this conversation before. Your turn.
Thank you. Well, we know that experiences are really important in shaping policy, and women are more than 50% of the population, just north of 50%. So our experiences are really important when we shape policy, especially when it comes to, raising families, economic policies that really impact families. So it's just so important. I remember, 1997, a long time ago, when I was entering the political world, running for city council in Salem. And I have to tell you, my female friends thought I was crazy. They thought, why would you want to do that? Why do you want to, and I said, because I want to make my community better. I want to, I had helped build a playground for the neighborhood kids. We put together a playground committee. It was such a positive experience for my community. But I would tell you that my women friends weren't that supportive. They really didn't understand it. Now, fast forward to today, I think that has changed, but I do still think that we need women to support women, especially getting into the political arena, where together, collectively, our voice matters, and that the laws, so we saw that beautiful video at the beginning of all those, all of the women, and thank you, Madam President, for doing that. I had goosebumps when I saw that video again. But you know what? I mean, all those presidents are men. So, it's important that women have a seat at the table to be able to shape policy. And now I make it a mission of mine to talk to young women, at the beginning of their careers about, listen, start locally, get involved with your community. Your voice matters. And then, think about running for office, sit on a board, sit on a commission, whatever it might be, especially for our younger generation. Because their voices, all of our voices, women's voices matter. Thank you.
Senate President Spilka, I know you have a pitch too.
Well, thanks. I'll give you an example directly related to our discussion today. The 2008 recession had a far greater impact on men than it did on women. Because job losses at the time were heavily concentrated in construction and manufacturing, where women only made up 10% of the construction industry and 29% of the workforce, respectively. This she session that we are experiencing now is reversed. So if Senator Lovely, Representative Tyler, and I, and all the other women in the legislature and across state governments, if we were not here to put a laser focus on this along with everybody else and bring our experiences to bear on the reasons why this might be happening, it's possible that no one would be talking about it. Why? Because men may feel it doesn't impact them. Although we know if it impacts women, it impacts men and families, but not as directly. We know from experience that everything from car designs to medical studies have been created looking at or studying the quote, average male in mind. And so it's not hard to imagine what happens when women are not only at the table, but speaking up. Their voices need to be heard. You know, it doesn't do much good if women are at the table, but they fail to speak up. Another thing is, and I know the Women's Legislative Caucus has reinstituted a women's mentoring program, which I so applaud. Women need to be available to mentor other women and help bring them up. We need to get women into more positions, whether it be in business or state government or local government, where decision making occurs, and letting them feel comfortable. But I agree with Representative Tyler too. There's so many different avenues. Figure out what is your passion, what areas do you really get excited about, and find ways to either volunteer or get involved or run for office in something, because I ran for the legislature originally because my passion was to change the Chapter 70 education funding laws, which I thought were needed to be more adequate and equitable. It took years to do it, but that's what got me to run. And that was very satisfying. And it was very satisfying my first year as Senate President to pass the Student Opportunity Act and work hard to get that done. And that's why I believe we will, really fully implement it this year. It's critical. It's really important. But there are a lot of avenues. Just find, women should find what area they're passionate about and just get involved, that you really can make a difference.
I agree. It's interesting to me that how much can be done at the local level and how many positions are open, particularly on municipal volunteer boards,
Right.
where women are deeply unrepresented. We talk about, we don't track all the numbers in every town, but if you look at your own backyard, you'll find that women are not in those decision-making roles. They're not on the climate change committee. They're not on the conservation committee. And, we really would like to see that change, but we only do that if more people participate. So I know there are lots of people are asking questions in the Q&A. One is for Representative Tyler, and it really speaks to this younger generation of which you are very much a part, and we see with this where our interns, like, they're so engaged in the world. What advice do you have for them? What skills do they need to be developing if they want to run for office or if they want to run campaigns for women?
I think one of the pieces of advice that I would give is to reach out to your local electeds and figure out how you can uplift the platform. It's not about that individual. A lot of us are very, very selfless people. And we want to, again, use our platforms intentionally. And so figure out what you can do to be able to uplift that platform of your state rep or local senator. And then maybe one day we can figure out a way, we're not going to be state reps and senators forever, where we can pass the baton. I didn't have the luxury of having that opportunity. I came in and didn't really have a mentor. And upon the exit of our great Senator Linda Dorsina-Forey, I was one of the only Black women in the State House for upwards to a year plus. And so didn't have that luxury to be able to do so. So that's one thing I would say for young women. And then on the other end, for leaders in the community, I would say if you don't have a mentee, please grab one, because your wisdom can go very, very far and wide. And we want to make sure that we're continuing the legacies of our district, and we can do that through collective and just collaboration and partnership and mentee, and have a great mentee and mentorship relationships.
Oh, thank you so much. Senator Lovely, would you also speak to that younger generation? What do you think what should our interns be doing right now? Like, they're all interested in politics. How do I get them to run for office sooner rather than later?
Excuse me. I think that Rep. Tyler really hit it on the head. Mentees, and that does not have to be like a formal type of arrangement. I can't tell you how many mentors that I had that I just looked to for advice. Someone who I admired, who I thought that had my same values, who I would reach out to, and just ask questions or just observe. So it could be a teacher, it could be an older adult. One of mine was a retired judge who I looked to, who just recently passed away, Judge Butchko, an amazing man who actually mentored many people unknowingly, just for the person who he was, and very approachable by everybody. So, think of someone who you would want to emulate. Perhaps in the political world, or perhaps not. And reach out to that person, observe and reach out and have that conversation. I think that's really important. Relationships matter. And I think that's a great way for a young person to be able to, just kind of figure out what the direction is.
And Justine, you're still doing virtual office hours.
Yes, every Monday morning we've done office hours since I've been in office, and now we do them virtually to make sure that we're accessible to people. I will tell you, one efficiency or a silver lining to a pandemic is being able to do these types of forums, office hours by Zoom. I will tell you, we have become even more efficient, I think, than we ever have been. And probably because we all have taken a major, commute off of our plates, we can use that time as well. So I think once we get back into the State House, I hope to see a hybrid of being able to continue these types of venues. Look, there's 97 participants. Can you imagine if you were in a physical space somewhere? The Zoom meetings participation in Salem is up 700%. For boards, school, there was 400 people at a school committee meeting recently, 400 who tuned in. So I think this is just a great forum and to be able to stay connected.
Thank you. Senate President Spilka, I also want to ask you for your advice. Our interns are interested in politics, but how do we get them to actually put their hand up and run? What do you tell people of this generation?
I think the president might be frozen.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll move. One Representative Chynah, Tyler, we often get the question of how do we get more women of color to run for office? And I know that's something that we really care very deeply about. Would you speak to that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I again ran when I was 26 years old, but I can tell you that I didn't have a relationship or didn't know very much about politics prior until entering the field. I laugh at that because I wish there were some things that I've known prior to that, just jokingly. But to get more women of color to run for office is to be able to make sure that you're gaining their trust. So many people of color have distrust with government and with civics in general, and we have to take responsibility over that and change that narrative and figure out what we can do to be able to allow for them to be able to have a positive engagement and a relationship with government and our government officials, and then they will naturally want to continue to engage. And engagement also entails running for office. So as long as we're continuing to be hands-on and making sure that that these platforms and that government works for everyone, people will naturally gravitate towards wanting to be able to contribute in whatever capacity. And that may not necessarily mean running for office. That may mean raising money, being a finance director. That may mean being an organizer. That may mean being the best chief of staff. There's a space for everyone. You don't absolutely have to be the elected. So yeah.
Thank you. Senate President Spilka, are you unfrozen? Do you
I hope so.
Okay.
So could you just repeat the question so that because I did not hear it?
We're wondering about how do we get younger people involved in politics and running for office or running campaigns? And specifically, how do we get more women of color really running for campaigns?
Okay, first of all, I have to say the one thing about the whole climate change and global warming issue this past year or two has been our young people and the passion that they have shown towards making us and helping us focus on climate change. It has been wonderful to see the energy and the passion from so many of our young people in the State House, outside the State House, across the state, across the country, actually, and to see them really re-engaging very loud. And we heard them in the State House, and I hope they feel we responded, and I hope they keep our feet to the fire. That is one area that I think many young people are very passionate and engaged about. But there are a lot of other areas that people can get engaged and passionate about. And we need their input. We need their energy and their passion for those areas too. And I think it's important when I was younger, I never even thought about working at the State House or getting involved. I never thought I'd be a senator, let alone Senate president. So, but this is something that I think people have to look for, be a little bit more intentional if they want to work at the State House, to contact, the senators or the representatives. If there's an area in particular that they're interested in, find out who is the senator or the representative that's working on those particular issues. Contact the Human Resources Office. I know we have somebody that we hired over a year ago that is looking for expanding recruitment to folks, particularly to young people of color, to get more in the Senate. But so there are different avenues, and that is just the State House. In their community, there's a lot of organizations and boards and commissions that people can spend some time on and testing the waters to see if this is something that they enjoy doing. I have to say, I think it's very powerful for any individual, particularly a younger person, to be involved in an issue and see their involvement help make a change. That will help keep their momentum going and wanting to be involved and realizing that their voice does matter. So I think that some of it is looking for opportunities, seizing opportunities, but finding, again, I keep going back to find something that you have a passion about, an interest, because then it's not work, then it's something that they will love doing.
Thank you. That is really helpful. I think the State House can feel foreboding. It can feel very hard to figure out how you even enter. I didn't enter until I went to your event 2 years ago. So thank you so much for mentioning like the HR function, and Representative Tyler, thank you for mentioning that there are just so many paid roles that you can play as a staff person. That's I think people need to hear that. So my last question before we end is actually, it's for me. I'm actually looking for advice. So, the Mass Women's Political Caucus has for 50 years been almost a singular voice, a kind of rebellion against the status quo. What role do organizations play right now?
I'm happy to start. I want to say thank you to MWPC, because when I first ran in the Senate, I came in for an interview. So as someone who was running for a major office, couldn't have been more helpful, more guiding your organization for someone who, at the time, I was taking off a huge bite. Like the Senate president, I never thought I would be in the Senate, the Massachusetts State Senate. So proud and honored to be here. I also want to give a shout out, because you had said at the beginning that I'm co-chairing the Women's Caucus this session in the State House, working with my great co-chair, Representative Pat Haddad. And the caucus is really focusing this session on promoting women, but especially promoting women to run for office. We want to be mentors. So get to know, I would say, for the audience, get to know your state rep and your senator, and you may have more than one of each, depending on your district. Get to know them. We're real people. We're here to serve, and we're here to, give advice. I love it when I hear from women who are thinking of running for office. And then I refer them back to NWPC for that assistance, for that boots on the ground assistance on how do you run for office? How did I do it? I knocked on a lot of doors. People want to see you. It's hard to do in a pandemic. You can talk to any one of the candidates that ran last year for office. It was hard to do, but we'll get back to knocking on doors. Again, it's a great way to meet people, really know what's going on in your community. And thank you to MWPC for all you do to promote women candidates and electeds.
Thank you. Does anyone else have advice for me before I let you go?
I think basically just continuing doing organizational meetings like this and panels and letting people hear, as both Rep. Tyler and Senator Lovely and we're just people, we're doing the best we can. We're working hard because we love our jobs. It's very rewarding. It can be very frustrating at times, but it's also incredibly rewarding. I still love what I do. And to be able to hear from us and meet us, even if it's virtually, I think makes a difference. And hopefully we'll get people to feel, well, maybe I can pick up the phone and call my rep or call my senator, especially if they're women, or call somebody that I can maybe help connect with to learn more and get ideas. I think that is a big step. So thank you for having today.
Oh, thank you. Representative Tyler, do you want to offer some last words?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for this work. And this is the work. So I definitely want to encourage you to be able to create platforms where we can share information and share best practices, because it's ultimately how we become great. I'm learning other experiences, and hopefully, through Senator Lovely and Senate President Spilka and myself and all the other women who serve on Beacon Hill at the Massachusetts State House, we hopefully have made an influence in the next generation to come, and encourage our folks to continue to stay in government and make the best impact they can possibly make amongst women and amongst across the Commonwealth.
This has been an inspiring hour for me. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. This has been, I'm new to the presidency's role, and this is great. Thank you so very much. I do want to say, save the date, December 2nd. We will turn 50 officially, and that's 50 years of rebellion that we get to celebrate. So we also, this is a group that started with Doris Kearns Goodwin writing the bylaws. So I do want to ask everyone, as we wrap up, become a member, get to know us, and help us find that focus that we need to be relevant in Massachusetts for the next 50 years. Thank you again for joining us today. We will be at your forums very soon. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. That was amazing.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Senator Lovely, I will see you ladies soon in the building, hopefully sooner than later. And thank you. Happy Women's History Month.
Happy Women's History Month, and everybody stay healthy and well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.